Okay, let's get started. Welcome everyone, we're excited to have you here for our presentation, Revolutionize Your Embedded Open Source Security, Eliminate Vulnerabilities, and Future-Proof Your Systems. An alternate title that we had in mind is How to Achieve an Unfair Advantage by Wiping Out Half of Your CVEs and Accelerating the Handling of Everything That Remains. Have you ever failed to handle a CVE in time? Ever feel concerned that you couldn't catch up? I want you to imagine having the peace of mind that comes from knowing that your systems are secure without spending countless hours managing vulnerabilities. It's not your fault that traditional methods of vulnerability management are failing you. The volume of threats is simply overwhelming. Generic tools and outdated methods are your enemies, causing more harm than good by providing inaccurate data and false positives. You've probably suspected that there's a better way to handle vulnerabilities, and you're right. We're here to show you how. Today we'll reveal tools and techniques that make vulnerability management efficient and reliable, reducing your workload and stress and giving you a chance to get ahead. The world is getting scarier, and as embedded devices become woven into every aspect of our lives, the stakes have never been higher. Our embedded devices are everywhere, in our homes, our cars, our workplaces. We trust these devices to work flawlessly and stay secure. We trust them with our personal data, our safety, and even our livelihoods. But with that trust comes great responsibility. Every person watching and listening today has the potential to stop a zero-day attack and protect your customers. You have the power to ensure that trust isn't misplaced. It's a daunting task, but an incredibly important one. Imagine being able to prevent the next big security breach, the next Log4j or XZ vulnerability. If we can help you catch up and prevent these security threats, the world will be better and we'll all sleep more soundly at night. That's why we're so excited about what we're covering today. We're going to share with you the tools and strategies that will empower you to manage vulnerabilities more efficiently, ensure the accuracy of your data, and create a bulletproof long-term security strategy. Our goal in this webinar is to get you to believe that the only way to survive the tsunami of vulnerabilities is to have an unfair advantage with superior tools that reduce the number of vulnerabilities you ever see and speed up the process of handling the ones you do see. This is a co-hosted webinar by Timesys, a Lynx software technology company, and RunSafe Security. Timesys is a pioneer in embedded Linux and Android solutions. With over 20 years of experience, Timesys provides a comprehensive suite of tools, engineering services, and security solutions that help companies bring their embedded systems to market quickly and securely. Our mission is to empower developers with the tools and knowledge they need to build secure, robust embedded systems. Now I'd like to introduce Maciej Halas, the Director of EMEA Business Development and Technical Sales at Timesys, a Lynx software technology company. Maciej has over 25 years of experience in embedded computing, focusing on embedded Linux and real-time systems. He is a technical lead and the creator of numerous Timesys tools and products, including the Timesys University Embedded Linux workshops. Throughout his career, Maciej has authored numerous articles on embedded Linux and the industry at large. RunSafe Security is dedicated to protecting embedded systems and IoT devices from cyber threats. Their innovative technology focuses on preventing memory corruption vulnerabilities, which are a common attack vector in embedded systems. RunSafe's approach is unique in that it integrates seamlessly with existing development workflows, providing robust protection without compromising performance. I'm also thrilled to introduce Doug Britton, the Chief Strategy Officer and Director of RunSafe Security. Doug plays an essential role in showcasing how RunSafe technology changes the economics of cyber defense. He has driven the technology strategy, development of the patent portfolio and IP strategy, managed software development teams, and built a world-class security research team. Before RunSafe Security, Doug founded Caprica Systems, which sold its Tachyon business to Samsung. He has managed large-scale security research, reverse engineering, and exploit development programs for Lockheed Martin and SAIC. Doug started his career at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications and served as a Russian linguist and interrogator in the U.S. Army. What we'll cover today: secret number 1, how to effortlessly manage the growing tsunami of vulnerabilities and save hundreds of hours of effort. Secret number 2, how to achieve laser-precise accuracy in vulnerability data and eliminate false positives. And secret number 3, how to implement a bulletproof long-term security strategy and future-proof your systems. This will work for anyone working on embedded devices using open source software. If you're developing with Yocto, Buildroot, OpenWRT, or Android using Linux, Lynx OS, and bare metal applications, this will work for you. Now, I would like to ask one commitment from you. As soon as you agree with the value of having an unfair advantage, I would like you to either commit to taking action or share this information with someone who would find it valuable. At the end of the presentation, we're going to make a very special offer and give you everything you need to claim your unfair advantage. So let's get into it. We'll go over secrets 1, 2, and 3, covering efficiency, accuracy, and future-proofing. Now here's Maciej Halas.
Thank you, Jonathan. Welcome everyone again. So I'm going to discuss today with you the challenges behind dealing with vulnerabilities. And also will present to you several options as solutions to decrease the number of vulnerabilities, but also to mitigate vulnerabilities which you might not know about. So together with my colleague from RunSafe, we're going to introduce two different technologies that are designed to address or help address vulnerability challenge. The only way to survive that tsunami of vulnerabilities is to use superior tools and technical solutions that reduce greatly the number of vulnerabilities that you are exposed to, limiting number of false positives, but also speed up the process of triaging and handling the vulnerabilities that you are aware of. There's initial information which is important also from a cybersecurity perspective, because it describes to you, to the certifying body, the composition, software composition of your product. And so those regulations are issued for all market segments pretty much. So regardless whether you are in medical, industrial, automotive, most likely there is a regulation that applies to you. What we also see as a challenge, the biggest challenge, is the growing number of vulnerabilities. I'll talk about that in the next slide or two. But what we also see is the increase in 0 days vulnerabilities and exploits. So vulnerabilities that do not have a available fix at the time when they are discovered. Some of the challenges that we see as well is behind generating accurate software bill of materials and managing software bill of materials across multiple products. So I'll introduce to you a nice way of managing the SBOMs, keeping them all in one place, generating SBOMs. SBOM is just step one. Step two is identifying vulnerabilities that apply to the software that you use in your product. And here's where we see the sheer volume of vulnerabilities that are actually staggering and that are complicating the triaging process or consuming basically more resources and time. Many of our customers are new to cybersecurity process, therefore they come in with no process at all, no workflow, so they look for a way to kind of structure it. So today's presentation's goal is also to help maybe introduce one approach that could work for you. So let's move on. Managing the growing tsunami of new vulnerabilities. I spoke to that topic a little bit earlier, but you can see in this slide that number of vulnerabilities that are discovered is growing year over year. So in 2023, we see on average 539 new vulnerabilities that are reported per week. That's across all the different softwares. But if we are statistically looking at any particular product, you should expect more or less 10 to 15 vulnerabilities to be reported against your product every week. So what is the problem? The first issue is that many companies, products did not have a good understanding of the software components which are actually included in the product. So they did not have a software bill of materials. And if you are leveraging off-the-shelf components such as, I don't know, wireless radios and some sort of other pluggable components, oftentimes those components come with software pre-installed on them, and not having information about SBOM of those components kind of leaves you blindsided, right? Because you wouldn't know exactly that there is potentially a security loophole that might open the floodgates for your product. So the lack of understanding of the product software composition overall is one of the big problems. So it's important to have a process where you manage software bill of materials for all software components which are used in your product. And then you have to construct a process, an approach, which is going to proactively notify you of new vulnerabilities that are reported against your product and will provide also potential ways to address those issues, whether it's patching, turning off certain features, and so on. I've included in the slide a couple of logos, OpenSSL and Log4j. You might be familiar with those two software components because there were highly publicized vulnerabilities that affected these software components in the past. And those software components are used in various different products out there. So what happened is US government issues an executive order 14028 mandating all the companies that work with any federal agencies really to have or generate a software bill of material for products, right? To generate it and to manage it. So companies ought to understand exactly what software is in their product. Why? Because once you know what software is in your product, you can start you can identify vulnerabilities which are affecting that software. So that's the executive order that was issued in May of 2021 in US. In Japan, there's a similar requirement for an SBOM in products, but I also wanted to talk about Europe. In Europe, recently approved is the Cyber Resilience Act, which basically requires not only cybersecurity, but security overall, right? So it starts with requirements around secure by design. We have, of course, solution for that as well, which you can find out more by looking at some of our other webinars. But CRA also requires that companies deliver products without known vulnerabilities, or at least triaged and addressed some way. You have to provide a secure default configuration. You need to implement security features to limit attack surface. If you have different, open ports, you have to kind of implement an approach method to limit what can be connected to it. And then the device needs to have a capability to update software in place. So if there are any vulnerabilities discovered for the software used in the product in the future, the device needs to have a way to accept an updated firmware, whatever that is, Linux kernel or file system applications, and then flash it, right, to close off the security loopholes. The CRA also introduces obligations on manufacturers, so how they handle vulnerability, how they do the product cybersecurity risk assessment, and of course, there's a requirement on reporting. So you can see in the slide what those different aspects are about, but CRA is in effect. And what's important to note here is that there are pretty hefty fines associated with not following the CRA guideline in Europe. Therefore, we expect that companies are going to approach the CRA seriously. And of course, we'll look for solutions such as the ones that we are going to be talking about more today. Let's continue on software bill of materials for a moment. There are different ways in which you can generate the software bill of materials. You can use some sort of binary scanners. You can extract the information about the software composition from binary scan, from source code, from perhaps there's a package manager running on a device itself. So you can query the package manager, identify what software is installed. And there's, of course, a way to extract the software bill of material directly from a build system. Why? Because you have access to all the metadata which are available in the build system. Therefore, you can access very easily information about package name, version, license, what are the patches that are applied, and what's the configuration for a specific component, such as Linux kernel. And so all that information basically makes the SBOM coming from a build system the most accurate SBOM that you can generate, right? So I'm going to introduce to you in the next couple of slides the solution, the tool that we have built for SBOM generation and management, but also for vulnerability management and tracking, or tracking and managing, a tool called Vigilus. Vigilus is using the SBOM that's coming from a build system. Okay. How do you find vulnerabilities? Well, on the left-hand side here, you can see the software bill of material coming from open source components, which is, for example, the entire Linux BSP, baseline BSP. But this picture here captures also SBOM coming from supply chain. So if you're buying off-the-shelf components, you can ask the vendor of the component to provide you with a software bill of materials. Nowadays, there are two major standards which are in use. It's an SPDX and CycloneDX for SBOM. So if they can provide you with one of those file formats for the SBOM, you can just simply use that and keep it side by side with SBOM for the entire open source system. And then there's you can generate also software bill of material for your application code. So any IP code that you write can have its own SBOM. So once you have those SBOMs, which describe the complete software composition of the product, you need to scan that SBOM for vulnerabilities. And to do that, you need to have access to a highly accurate vulnerability database. It's an important statement because if you have an accurate database, the results, of course, are going to be inaccurate. So after the scan, you're going to receive a vulnerability assessment report. And that vulnerability assessment report should be tracked on a per product release. Why? Because each product release might have a different software composition and version and packages, right? So it's important to do this type of scanning for every release of a product. And then, of course, keep tracking that information over time. How do you do that in an efficient way to manage the vulnerabilities? Let's take a look at the Vigilus architecture here. On the left-hand side, you can see the SBOM generation part of Vigilus. So our tool has a number of plugins which allow you to auto-generate software bill of materials straight out of a build system. So an embedded, the most common build systems that we see is Yocto, Buildroot, OpenWRT. But we also have a plugin for FreeRTOS, and there are other, of course, solutions especially for ecosystem that allow you to generate SPDX or CycloneDX formatted SBOMs for perhaps languages such as Python, Java, JavaScript, and then use those SBOMs, import those SBOMs into Vigilus for vulnerability tracking. Right? So Vigilus has ability to import SBOMs from outside world and then manage those SBOM for product releases, just like I described in the previous slide. Now, what's important here is, again, going back to this efficiency and vulnerability management and accuracy of data. You can see in the slide that there is a curated vulnerability database. What does it mean? It means simply that when we import on a daily basis vulnerability information into our database from NIST, NVD database, from open source projects, GitHub, we have a semi-automated process which fixes most common issues that we observe with CVEs. These issues can be that the fixes applied by a maintainer to an older version, but the information about this never makes its way to a CVE report itself. So we kind of reintroduce that information just as an example. With this highly accurate vulnerability database and with information about configuration of certain software components in your product, such as the Linux kernel, we know exactly which drivers you're going to use or you are using, in fact, in the product. And therefore, we can expose you only to the vulnerabilities that are applicable to your product and to the configuration of software components that you use in your products. Okay, so accuracy of the database and ability to recognize false positives and not exposing them to you means that you're not going to see vulnerabilities that are not applicable, and you can totally focus on vulnerabilities that are applicable, right? So you can look for patches, fixes, and maybe configuration changes. Vigilus has complete functionality that allows you to generate reports. has the API, which allows you to control the entire process in an automated way. Automation here is also a key because um, by virtue of generating SBOMs from build system, we already plugged into your DevOps process. And with APIs, you can then instruct the Vigilus to generate reports, run scans, and keep those reports side by side with other build artifacts, right? So fully automated DevOps here, DevSecOps maybe. One thing I didn't talk about yet, which is important, is the distinction between various information that we track in Vigilus. So CVE stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. And it's an information about how a specific piece of software is vulnerable, right? And the CVE has references to fixes, but it also can have an associated common weakness enumeration. So what is a common weakness enumeration? It's basically a standard that helps classify and describe the types of weaknesses that can lead to vulnerabilities. So for example, the root cause of the vulnerability is the weakness around memory, right? So if a hacker can access memory for a specific process in such and such place, they may find an entry because of offending code in the software, right? So the common weakness enumeration information is available in Vigilus. And in the second part of today's presentation, my colleague is going to describe how you can leverage that information to further minimize the number of vulnerabilities that you are exposed initially and in the future. So limiting the amount of time that you and your team have to spend triaging vulnerabilities and keeping your products secure. I did talk about the ecosystem, so I want to make sure that I highlight that a bit more. So the vulnerability database that we have behind Vigilus includes vulnerabilities from NVD database, but also we cover other ecosystems. So if you develop your software, your application, your IP in, I don't know, Java, Node.js, .NET, Rust, Python, Ruby, there are ways in which you can very easily generate SBOMs, and that information is pre-integrated in Vigilus. So you get to track vulnerabilities not only for the open source components, but also for your application IP software. And our database contains the information about vulnerabilities coming from those different ecosystem databases. And you can see here a list of them, right? So Rust Advisory Database, Haskell Security Advisories, GitHub Advisory Database, and so on. So going back to the automation, I have a slide on it. And as you can see, the automation is key because with automation, you can basically rely on a process. So this is where you can set up a process for vulnerability monitoring in such a way that when there is a new vulnerability that is, I don't know, critical or high priority, you're going to receive a notification automatically from a system. You're not going to have to go back and ask, hey, tell me what's new. Is there any critical vulnerabilities this week, right? The system is, if it runs in the automated fashion, it's going to automatically send you an email, hey, this week you're good. Or the following week, it can say, this week we have 2 critical vulnerabilities and we believe you should take a look at them, right? So as you can see, the setup is very straightforward. So to summarize, the vulnerability management is an endless cycle, and you need to have an efficient process in your company that takes care of that. And automation is the key. Using the right set of tools is going to save you time and money, and will also help you meet various regulations that nowadays apply to all market segments. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton to my colleague from RunSafe. So Doug, over to you.
Hey, this is Doug Britton. Thanks so much for the opportunity to collaborate with you guys. Vigilus is pulling amazing, fantastic data out of the SBOM. So what we want to do now is dig into how we can help organizations save thousands of hours and millions of dollars by doing something really actionable with the data identified by the SBOM. So RunSafe provides the ability to protect against the single largest source of vulns and exploits in embedded devices. The issues highlighted by CISA, DHS, and NSA state that memory corruption risk is typically 2/3 of the vulnerabilities in IoT devices and compiled code. Including RunSafe protection in the build process offers immediate protection against exploitation of both known and unknown vulns. And that covers more than 85 of the common weaknesses used to analyze vulnerabilities. Once the code is applied to a system, even zero-day bugs in the memory corruption space can't exploit a system. As a result, our customers enjoy much less of a panic response when new vulns are identified. As you'll see in a live analysis in a few minutes, this protection typically covers more than 50% of the issues that are known in Linux and C and C++ based system. It covers nearly 40% of the vulns that are known to have been weaponized in the field. This allows your customers to operate, the systems with much less downtime due to security issues, patching, etc. So how does it work? At build time, it's easily added into, Yocto build root, Android, in a way where you just add it in as a new recipe. It works with typical compilers, Clang, GCC, ICC, and Linux, QNX, and other RTOSes. The way it works is instead of compilation proceeding directly from the compiler to the system linker, we pause compilation after it's gone through the precompiler and once the .o files have been created. We analyze those .o files to highlight function sizes, locations, and cross-references, and that content is then added on to the end of the .o file in a new section called the text.rp. And then the system proceeds to normal linking. The output, as a result, is a binary that has this function information in it and an extra linked library, liblfr, our technology. So in runtime, what happens is the process is reorganized at a function level. So you may be familiar with address-based layout randomization, a technology that's been around since the mid-aughts. So what ASLR does is relocate an entire block of memory at one time into a different physical base address, but you still have large blocks of contiguous code memory. So the entire library itself is still loaded sequentially in memory, so that if an attacker is able to get a memory leak into that block of code, they're able to reassemble their ROP gadgets. Which is also why ASLR hasn't done much to slow down attackers in the last 20 years. The issues that are on the table today in memory corruption all act on systems where ASLR is turned on. So ASLR hasn't slowed the attackers down much. What RunSafe does is randomize things at a function level. And on average, every binary has 280 functions. And that gives you 280 factorial possibilities, which is more than, 10 to the 400th. So there's a lot of diversity there. And what this does is prevent an attacker from knowing where their targets in memory are relative to their potential entry point. There's just too much granularity in how things are organized and too much in how they're randomized for an attacker to know how to stitch their attack back together. And the other great thing about this approach is that it doesn't impact device performance, because we're not adding new instructions. If your program had 1 million instructions, it still has 1 million instructions. We haven't added copies, lookups, loads, adds, anything like that. No new logic got added, which means there's no change in system performance. So when we analyze how an image looks with and without RunSafe, and we'll do this live in a moment on an actual system, with RunSafe not present, there are about 507 issues that come up in a 4.0.7 SBOM of a common version of Yocto. 507 issues and 249 are high or critical. When RunSafe gets applied, the number of unfixed drops down to 240, with nearly 160 of the high and critical issues being taken off the table. And all that was needed to be done for that was to add us into as a layer in the Yocto build. So when you put RunSafe and Vigilus together, you're able to reduce risk by protecting against 0 days and known bugs in the memory corruption space. And this typically accounts for 40% of known exploited vulnerabilities in the wild. And as you'll see in just a moment, that's typically also more than 60% of the high and critical CVEs. This allows the team to stay focused on other issues, feature development, and solving the really hard exploits that might be in the directory traversal space and things like that. This allows you to reduce costs because you're able to triage the vulnerability burden. And by using this with Vigilus, you're able to immediately visualize the security ROI of RunSafe being applied. And this ROI is going to show how much reduction there can be in patching for your customers. So let's jump into a live demo.
All right, so starting out, we're taking a CVE report from Vigilus for a Yocto-based device. We can export that CVE report as a CSV and then load it into the RunSafe code vulnerability mitigation visualizer. This is kind of a early tool because this will be integrated into Vigilus in the future, but for the time being, we're able to look at the impact. So I went ahead and preloaded that CVE report into this tool. And from here, you can see similar information as you would in Vigilus. It'll give you a breakdown of the vulnerabilities that are present in the CVEs, but more importantly, it will analyze out the memory-related CVEs so that you can see what kind of impact RunSafe code will have on your device. So in this CVE list, all of the red tags are memory-related common weakness enumerations. In some cases, there's a mix of a memory-related and non-memory related, which is why sometimes it says partially memory, but there's a decent number in here. I think the total was 48% of the overall CVEs. And there's also a breakdown of what percentage of CVEs based on criticality. So you can see it's biased very heavily towards critical and high, which makes sense based on the nature of memory-related vulnerabilities. And this is all the current vulnerabilities that are present in the system. And in Vigilus, you do have the option to apply a kernel-based configuration filter. So if you have certain options turned off or configuration settings turned off, you'll take CVEs out based on those settings. However, the proportion of CVEs stays roughly the same as far as the number that are affected by memory-related and as well as the number that are critical, high, medium, and low. This is an example of a CVE report that has a filter applied based on the kernel config, and you can see proportionally between the unfiltered and filtered version, you still see a lot of your critical and high CVEs that get filtered out.
So what is going to be an interesting value proposition for end customer is also the fact that in Vigilus, you can still get notifications about critical and high CVEs that are discovered and applicable normally to the customer's product. But if you are going to then turn on the RunSafe filter because you have RunSafe technology integrated in your solution, you will see that you don't have to worry about these vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and what you can also see from this excellent analysis is that consistently, even with multiple slices of the kernel, greater than 60% of the high and critical CVEs are protected against. And those, our customers have really enjoyed this capability because those highs and criticals are the ones that are most disruptive to their development and deployment processes, because those are the ones that get everybody concerned right away. People get woken up in the middle of the night to sort those out. The other thing is what you're also seeing there is that you're protected, in advance when the newest 0 days get announced. What these numbers are showing you is protection against known bugs, but what we're also seeing is that there's a 7 in 10 chance that the very next CVE that gets announced that's higher critical, you are already protected. So that's something our the dev teams for our customers have enjoyed a lot.
And that's a very great value proposition, Doug, I think, because without the RunSafe technology, normally customers would have to go through a maintenance process. So find the fix, apply the fix, retest, release to devices out there in the field, which oftentimes can be, time consuming and requiring a lot of effort, right? And with RunSafe technology, they don't have to do anything. It's RunSafe technology is protecting them against those vulnerabilities, and that's a fantastic value proposition.
Let me ask you a question. Are you enjoying the content so far? In the last 35 minutes or so, we've covered the 3 secrets. You discovered how you can use Vigilus to turn your vulnerability management from a nightmare into a streamlined automated process, saving you hundreds of hours and drastically reducing manual effort. You've seen how you can ensure your vulnerability data is pinpoint accurate, eliminating frustrating false positives that waste your time and resources, using our curated vulnerability database to minimize irrelevant alerts. This allows you to focus only on critical issues that truly matter and avoid chasing ghosts in your system. Finally, you learned how to create a robust, proactive security strategy that not only addresses current vulnerabilities, but also protects you for future threats, making it easier to ensure your systems are always secure. Who feels like this, drinking from a fire hose? Maybe you're feeling a bit overwhelmed? That's okay. We wanted to make sure you have a framework so that when you leave here today, you have something you can start running with. But I know there's so much more that we can do for you and with you that we couldn't cover in the 30 to 40 minute presentation. Before the event, I talked to both RunSafe and Timesys leadership and asked if it'd be okay to make a special offer for you. I know you have questions and want to try out the software to see the impact it can have, and they said it was okay as long as you were all okay with it. So are you all okay if I spend the next 5 to 10 minutes making you a special offer that will make this process really, really simple for you? All right, cool. So the offer we created for you is called the Unfair Advantage Security Kit to revolutionize your process and future-proof your systems. There are a couple of things you'll get with this. First, you'll get a Vigilus trial, which will give you an opportunity to try out the workflow, generate an SBOM, and also get a CVE report, taking advantage of the filters that are available inside of Vigilus. You'll save hours of manual processing and get accurate curated CVE data. And if you've already used your trial or you're a prior customer, it's okay. When you opt in, we'll give you another chance to test it out and try out the Unfair Advantage Security Kit. So that's the first thing you're going to get with the Unfair Advantage Security Kit. Next, you'll get a chance to experience RunSafe code. Protect against an entire class of vulnerabilities with no performance trade-offs. Now, you might be wondering how difficult it is going to be to get RunSafe code set up on your system. Well, we'll help you out by giving you an over-the-shoulder quick start setup guide for RunSafe code so you can get set up in just a matter of minutes once you know what you're doing. But what if you don't have experience with SBOMs, CVEs, and the workflow to handle ongoing vulnerabilities? About a year and a half ago, Timesys did a 4-day crash course covering SBOMs, CVEs, triaging, and the overall workflow. We compressed that 4-day process down into about a 1-hour presentation, and we call it the mini SBOM and CVE crash course. You'll get access to that as part of the Unfair Advantage Security Kit, making it easy for you to get up to speed on SBOMs, CVEs, the triage process, and a workflow for dealing with the ongoing threats from new CVEs. You'll also get a proactive security insights report, which will give you another way to look at the overall process and show you how to take advantage of the next piece of the Unfair Advantage Security Kit. What about if you want to see the impacts of RunSafe code like we showed you in the demo? Well, we'll also give you access to the RunSafe Vulnerability Mitigation Visualizer. Now, it won't be available until the weekend, but if you're really anxious, we can also walk you through that after you provide us with your CVE report. And that also helps us lead into the next one. What if you have a question or need help getting started? We'll also provide you with one-on-one security coaching sessions, which can help you with understanding the process, getting set up with any of the tools, or interpreting the results from your mitigation visualizer. Now, if all this did was prevent a catastrophic data breach and the associated fines and reputational damage, would it be worth it to take advantage of something like this? What about if all it did was eliminate the overwhelming manual process of vulnerability management, allowing your team to focus on innovation? Would it be worth it? Or if it gave you the peace of mind knowing your systems are fortified against the most common and dangerous current and future exploits, would it be worth it? So, what does it cost to take advantage of the Unfair Advantage Security Kit? It's free. All you have to do is say maybe. If you go to futureproofyourdevice.com, you'll be redirected to an opt-in form where you can sign up to take advantage of the Unfair Advantage Security Kit. Now, it will require some setup on the back end. You'll need to sign up in a few different places, but that'll start the process to get you into your Vigilus trial, get you access to your RunSafe code trial, get you the Quick Start Setup Guide, the mini SBOM CVE crash course, the Proactive Security Insights report, and you'll get access to the RunSafe Vulnerability Mitigation Visualizer starting on the weekend. And you can also book a one-on-one security coaching session to help you with any of the components of this offer, getting set up, and then interpreting the results, and also planning your future process. So what's the catch? We want you to try it first. That way you can see what you're getting into. We want you to know what are the benefits of the process and what are the benefits for your device. We want you to know what's involved when you set it up and use it, and also what's not involved. And when you're ready to take the next step, we'll hop onto a call and show you how much you'll save, especially if you make a decision in the next 14 days. So you've got two choices. Option one, do nothing. Keep the same process you have and get the same results you've been getting. Option two, just say maybe and try it out. The real question is it worth committing 30 minutes to give it a chance? It will pay for itself even if the tools only do half of what we've said. So take advantage of the Unfair Advantage Security Kit by visiting futureproofyourdevice.com, opt in to just say maybe, and try out all of the cool stuff that we put into this offer. And when you're ready, you'll get in touch with us, and then we'll tell you how much you can actually save once you take advantage of both Vigilus and RunSafe code.
All right, let's go through some Q&A. I guess Mache and Doug, I'll let you guys go through the questions and kind of pick out what you want. All right, got you both up.
So one question that I saw is, how is RunSafe's security approach or memory safety approach different than ASLR? And the real trick there is ASLR is very pixelated. You know, it's the difference between 480p and 10,000p kind of granularity in what you're randomizing. So when ASLR does its randomization, you're moving entire blocks of multi-megabyte chunks of code. And when an attacker is trying to stitch together their memory-based attack, contiguous megabytes are enough for them to find the ROP gadgets they need. Again, our current state of ROP of memory safety attacks exist when ASLR is in place. So the protection isn't doing much. But what RunSafe does is, instead of moving in multi-megabyte chunks around, we're moving multi-byte chunks around. The average function has, or the average binary has 280 functions in it. And, you know, those, there are, you know, 10 to the 400 different ways that those functions can get organized. And that deprives the attacker of the insight they need to misuse the code in memory for a memory corruption attack.
Okay. So one question I wanted to address that I see here is how Vigilus process generates SBOMs. So I've mentioned in my presentation that we have some plugins. They are plugins for different build systems. And when a build system executes configuring and compiling the software for the product, it accesses the different recipes. Every package, software package, and every dependency of that package will have a dedicated recipe that tells the build system what it expects the build system to do. So what Vigilus does, the plugin, it actually piggybacks on the build process. And when the build process accesses a recipe for every single package, it gains access to that information about the package name, package version, package license as well is listed in a recipe, but also, you know, maybe less common information such as patches that are applied to that package. That's all in a recipe. And because we're piggybacking on this process, we can extract that information and we can leverage that information later on, first for SBOM generation, so we can create very accurate representation of what software is really built and included in the product. But we can also identify if some of the patches are there to address vulnerabilities. We can recognize this information and mark certain vulnerabilities in Vigilus as already fixed, right? So you couldn't achieve that with any other way of extracting SBOM information, but only through a build system.
So one of the questions is how can RunSafe work with, you know, my compiler, or what are the compiler limitations? So RunSafe has worked with every compiler that we've bumped into so far, GCC, Clang, ICC. We work with different operating systems and different processor architectures, ARM, PowerPC, x86, you know, 32, 64. We've worked on processors that are, you know, clocked in the low megahertz or, you know, in the gigahertz. So, and we've worked in processor environments that have, you know, megabytes, you know, tens of megabytes of RAM and gigabytes. So it works with those compilers because and you don't have to change your compiler. You know, changing someone's compiler is a massive overhaul, and so no changes to your compiler needed, and we bake right in, and you don't have to change your build process. We're able to shim into that build process. And if you're doing things like Yocto or BuildRoot or any of the embedded device build tools, then typically this only takes literally, you know, 5 minutes to get kicked off.
Yeah. So I can see also one other question for maybe Timesys that I can address here, which is how does Vigilus help with compliance to regulations? And I did talk about CRA, but there are also some, of course, other regulations which may be region specific, industry specific. So we have seen requirements for cybersecurity in medical, in automotive, in industrial, but they all have very common pieces that they identify that I guess customers, companies need to adhere to. And when it comes to cybersecurity, most of the regulations are calling for a process to identify vulnerabilities and to stay on top of that security feed. What that means is there needs to be associated engineering process to that cybersecurity process, where the engineering team that's responsible for maintaining the product takes action on security issues. Right, so Vigilus structures or creates that backbone for monitoring vulnerabilities, for providing the relevant, accurate cybersecurity feed to the security teams, but also to engineering teams, who can then, through the likes of Jira, perhaps take advantage of that information and schedule it in their sprints to address select security issues, and then roll out a version of the firmware with those fixes as a security maintenance release. Right, so Vigilus definitely becomes the core functionality behind that process.
So there's a couple of questions that popped up. So one is, if we've applied RunSafe, then do we need to find the patch and apply the patch? So we definitely would never recommend not patching. But what you get to do is change the urgency, because what RunSafe does is make a vulnerability not able to be exploited. So you're not able to get remote code execution and start pilfering the device. But if the vulnerability is still present, then that's not optimal. You'd prefer to get the patch done or get it applied. So what you're able to do, though, what our customers are able to choose, is when that gets applied without needing to panic. So you would still apply the patch at some point in the future, but you could do it at a regularly planned maintenance cycle instead of having to shut things down immediately to apply a patch to keep people from being able to hack in. So there's another question about, can RunSafe fix memory vulnerabilities in an RTOS? Yes. So we work with multiple RTOSs. VxWorks, Lynx. We're starting collaboration with QMX or QNX. We do not work on processors without an MMU. So multi-threading is not a problem. So yeah, there's a lot of questions here. Does it work on RTOSs? Yes. RTOSs on processors without MMUs? No. We do need to run out of RAM, and we need to run the application needs to run in RAM. Working with multi-threaded applications is not a problem, and we've worked in lots of different environments, multi-threaded high performance environments. And then it's not only for embedded Linux applications. To get to the last part of that question, we do embedded Linux applications and RTOS applications, DKMs and VxWorks, kicking off with Lynx soon, and other things.
So there is maybe one more question for me here. how does Vigilus track vulnerabilities over time for different product releases, as explained in a webinar today in a presentation. Okay, so we of course did not have enough time to go over a full demonstration of the Vigilus with its interface. So I'll briefly describe the process, but this is something that you can experience yourself with trial access when you register for that kit that Jonathan described a few minutes ago. In Vigilus, I mentioned that you import software bill of materials. So you basically associate a software bill of material with a specific release. You do that by creating a folder. So you create a folder structure. Top of that folder structure would describe the product which you're tracking. Then subfolders can be dedicated to specific releases. And in that subfolders, you can place specific SBOMs for those releases. And each of those SBOMs for a product are going to be tracking vulnerability information independently, right? So why? Because you might have multiple releases out there in the field, and it's important to stay on top of vulnerabilities, not only for the latest release, but also for the releases that are out there. So Vigilus would kind of follow that cybersecurity process, automatically monitoring the new vulnerabilities on all releases that you are actively tracking. Okay, so that's a nice feature, especially that you can set up notifications there, and you don't have to even log in into the interface. Vigilus can scan your SBOM on a daily, weekly, or monthly cadence, and proactively send you an email with a cybersecurity information, the delta, what's new since the last scan, telling you exactly how many critical, how many high priority vulnerabilities have been reported in that time period. So that's I think, a very useful feature that Vigilus brings to your process, because it's very scalable.
There was also a question about, how to convince customers that RunSafe can truly solve some CVEs rather than through patches. And what we've been able to show to our customers, again and again, is that if there's a vulnerability on a device that has a weaponizable exploit, we're able to show that when RunSafe's not present, that vulnerability can be weaponized. You're able to take control of the device. And then when RunSafe's applied, you're not able to. So we have demos that we've shown, of doing that for customers again and again. And so what that does, again, is give your customers confidence that while you're waiting for the patch to get applied, in those intervening, weeks or months, the device isn't going to be able to be targeted. So there's also a question, well, how, if you don't know the content of a 0-day, how do you know you can protect against a 0-day? And the reason that we know we can protect against 0 days is because our protection doesn't need to be trained on them. We assume that every function is vulnerable. We don't wait to find out that something is vulnerable. We just assume it's vulnerable, and we reorganize the internals of the binary in a way, knowing it's everything's vulnerable, and it blinds the attacker, whether we know about the vulnerability or not. And in a detailed follow-up discussion, hopefully, some people take Jonathan up on the unfair quick start kit that Jonathan described, but we would be able to go into the details of how we're able to protect against those 0 days that do come up, and we can show you why it works. also a question regarding like SBOMs and C and C++ applications. So one of the things that, C and C++, complex makefiles, because RunSafe, and I know Vigilus pulls, the information together as well, but one of the cornerstone pieces of IP in the RunSafe bailiwick that is also integrating with Vigilus is we can pull a detailed C and C++ SBOMs together from complex makefiles because we shim ourselves into the compilation process and we're able to track every file open and every dependency that comes into and out of a binary. So we know the process ID that started a compilation, and then we know every child PID all the way down and every file that every child PID referenced. And we're able to build a dependency tree out of all of that. And it's done in a way that, you don't have to make any changes. We're able to shim into the compilation process and get perfect insight and the ability to hash all of the files that are inputs into your your program, the .a's, the .h's, everything. And so that's worked really well for a lot of our customers in the, for example, in the weapon system space that have multi-decade-old C and C++ environments, but they don't have a package manager. So they need, for gigabytes of code, they need to figure out how to build a C and C++ SBOM. So yeah, that's definitely something that can be done, and it just gets added into the, you do an LD preload, now you're able to capture it all.
So I see one question, which probably is for both Doug and me. What are the licensing options for Vigilus and RunSafe Security? So on Vigilus side, we have a couple of versions of Vigilus. Vigilus is a subscription-based product, so you get access to Vigilus for a team of engineers. And the default subscription is 12 months. But we, of course, have customers that know that need to maintain products for years to come, very often 10 plus years, and they acquire license for longer periods, right? So 3-4 years, because they know that they will need it. We have a version of Vigilus which can also run.
Sorry, Machi, I cut you off. You got to unmute. Sorry about that.
Oh, so you didn't hear any of what I said?
Just like the last 10 words or so. Sorry about that.
I see. So it was the question that I was answering was about how the Vigilus and RunSafe software is licensed. And I was speaking to a Vigilus part. So Vigilus is offered as a subscription, yearly subscription for a team of engineers, and you can run as many scans for products as you want. The default Vigilus subscription runs on a Timesys server where you have your dedicated and protected area. No one else has access to your SBOMs and triage information. But we also have recently finished working on the version of Vigilus for on-prem deployments. A way to bring the service into your own in-house network with potential also for disconnected from a network setup, right? So having a Vigilus running in some sort of a lab where that's not connected to internet, where you're running builds. But there's of course a requirement in this air-gapped approach that someone needs to update regularly the database behind Vigilus. But nevertheless, that's an option in terms of licensing Vigilus from us.
And RunSafe is licensed typically based on, we created a special pricing package that we're happy to describe we will offer pricing that follows based on the various subscription levels that Maciej just described, and then it's also loosely based on the number of devices that you are deploying.
Cool. All right, checking for any other last minute questions. Looks like we're all set. So just check out. I think we're all clear. Doug, Maciej got the nod. All right, cool. So check out futureproofyourdevice.com. That'll redirect you to the opt-in page on Timesys website for the kit. It will take a little bit of setup because we are registering you for Vigilus and then getting you set up with the RunSafe code trial and then also providing further resources. But once you opt in, that'll kick off the process. And otherwise, if you have any other questions, feel free to email them to us, and we'll be sending out a resources page with the webinar replay and everything else later today. And otherwise, thank you so much for joining us for this presentation on revolutionizing your embedded open source security and eliminating vulnerabilities and future-proofing your systems. Let us know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and don't forget to check out that offer and go ahead and take advantage of the Unfair Advantage kit. All right, thanks everyone.